Hey, happy 2025, everybody. The Brewery Underground Podcast is back for yet another year. Amazingly enough, we made it. Hey, Scott Touron, are you here? What's going on?
I'm here. Dude, it does not feel like 2025.
It doesn't. Can you believe that? I mean, come on.
It's like, how did we get here so quickly?
How did this happen? But you know what?
2024 is gone. It's just gone.
Who has transformed himself from 2024 to 2025 is Joel Geier. Hey, Joel, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Great, man. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes.
Well, we're going to talk to you about some of your exploits.
Yeah.
In 2024 of some of the breweries you went to. First off, we got to quickly talk about the fact that you have a book out. It's Flights Across America, a brewery lover's journey by Joel Geier. It can be found almost everywhere. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Amazon's going to be the easiest place, but I'm also looking at getting it out into other sites as well. If you go to my social media, Brewery Travels Anywhere, you'll be able to find the links for that.
It's fantastic. We love it. It's a great book. Hey, on a previous podcast, Scott and I talked about just some of the things that we did in 2024, and we know that you have traveled the country in 2024, and you've done a lot of things. I'll tell you real quick, I'm kicking this one off with a beer. I don't know if you guys got something, but I'm kicking off the 2025 episode here with Half Batch Brewing here in Nashville. Their Scottish Ale.
Oh, yeah, they are under, yeah. That's a good spot.
Yeah.
If you come back to Nashville, I know you will at some point, wait till you see their new spot. Man, it's beautiful up there in Hendersonville. It's kind of right next door to where they were, but man, they've got this beautiful, beautiful giant brewery. It's really nice. And we love those guys too. They make great beer. Steve could test because he's drinking one.
I am drinking one.
Yep. So I've got you can't see it in the thing, but it's Creature Comforts, Stairway to Nowhere. It's a Baltic porter, and as the weather gets a little cooler, it's not cold here, but it's cooler. These porters are really nice. So, cheers, fellas.
So, Joel, on your brewery travels in 2024, about how many breweries did you get to?
I got to just under 100, I believe. I have to pull up the actual number here.
But it was quite a bit.
Yes, it was a little bit, not quite as much because this was the first year where we were not truly living on the road, but we were still able to visit quite a few places. The two big places were Hawaii and Alaska, which rounded out getting to all 50 states for me, getting to a brewery in all 50 states. We did a eight night, something like that. We did an inter-island cruise in Hawaii. So I got to breweries on 4 different islands.
Wow.
And then we also spent a week and a half up in Alaska, spending time in both Anchorage and Juneau and exploring kind of the areas around those places as well. Did a few other things, went out to California a couple times, obviously did some more things around the Midwest, went down to North Carolina. So, we got to some different breweries and, that was enjoyable. Like I said, the big ones being Hawaii and Alaska. I was really impressed with both, in particularly Alaska and Anchorage. Both states obviously have very unique challenges when it comes to brewing beer in terms of A, getting ingredients, B, if you're trying to distribute, getting equipment, proper stuff. It's all, a hassle because of their remote locations. But there's a lot of thriving breweries in both these places. And Hawaii in particular was interesting because prior to my trip, I had talked with other people that had gone to Hawaii, and it was, a lot of them seemed pretty underwhelmed, and they weren't really big fans. But I honestly found, good beer on all 4 islands that we were on. So I can attest that there is quality beer being made there for sure. And I just mentioned, Anchorage was my best beer city of 2024 for large, and then the best small beer city was Juneau. So Alaska did a little double dip, and I had a phenomenal trip. And my not only was my whole family there, but my parents were as well. So getting my dad, I think I've talked about before, my dad's the reason I'm into craft beer, and so getting to share that with him, it being my last state to cross off for breweries, getting to do that with him was very special. But yeah, I guess, are there any specific, like in terms of breweries? I don't know where you want me to take this next, I guess.
But that not only was Alaska your 50th state, counted in DC, but you hit your 500th city in Alaska too.
Yes, that's it was
a big one.
I wasn't sure that was going to happen a while ago, and then all of a sudden I forget what trip I made. It was I think it was, I forget where I went, but anyway, I hit up a place where I hit up multiple cities at once. I was like, oh, I might actually be able to line this up so that when I visited 49th State Brewery in Anchorage, it was the first brewery, it was my 50th state, and it was also made Anchorage the 500th city that I've been to a brewery in.
Yep.
So that made for a fun little picture. And that's actually the picture funny enough, that is the picture I used in my author bio as well. So,
no way. Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember the social media posts because we talked to you just a day or two before you leave.
Yeah. I recorded from my parents' house before we flew out.
Yeah. Yep. And you were gone like the next day or something.
Yeah.
So we had to squeeze it in before, as you kind of got there, you had to pack and stuff, and before you got out of there. So that was cool.
Yep.
I would have to think both states, Hawaii and Alaska, I mean, it's totally different, but the scenery alone.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting in a brewery, I mean, even describe that for people.
Yeah. So I would say more of the Alaska breweries had great views, but one of the best views, Mahalo Ale Works on the island of Maui, is up in this little, here, let me find the name of the town here, because I have a copy of this book, which is so helpful. Pukelanai, Hawaii, on the island of Maui. And so it's kind of up towards the national park there. And it is up at a higher elevation, and they have an outer deck, and it looks out. It's a full sweeping view, and you can see almost the entire other side of the island. You can see the way that Maui is shaped. You can see both coastlines and the little other towns, and it is just, especially the weather was just perfect. It was just like, okay, this is pretty much incredible.
Yeah.
And then Alaska had so many awesome views. Obviously, most of them all dealing with the mountains, but some dealing with the water as well. Two in Juneau, my winner for best taproom location and view was Forbidden Peak Brewing, which is located in Auk Bay. It's part of Juneau, but the neighborhood, like the community, is Auk Bay, and it's located directly across from the water, and from a little harbor with a marina, and there's mountains behind it across. So looking across the harbor was just amazing. And then 49th State that I just talked about, they're located right in downtown Anchorage, and they are a 3-level spot. So the first level is pretty typical, what you would expect from a cool, kind of Northwoodsy kind of brew pub. The second level is half indoor, half outdoor, with kind of the deck that kind of looks out onto the estuary bay, the water that goes up to downtown Anchorage. And then up top is a full wraparound. It's just a full outer deck that you can walk around, and you get full 360 views of not just the water, but also the downtown skyline and the mountains to the east of the city. Just amazing. And there was a couple other breweries also, like Girdwood, that was situated in the mountains. Just, I mean, the views there, and there were several others in Anchorage that took advantage of the fact that there's mountains in the view, because it's easy, it's easier to include those, because it's not like water where you have to be right next to it, really, to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Mountains you can see if you have like a deck up on top of the building, you get cool views of the mountains. So that was a really, cool part of the trip for sure.
And looking at those scenery while you're drinking beer, it almost, and not to say it wasn't good beer, but it almost doesn't even have to be good beer necessarily. If you're just sitting there and enjoying
definitely adds to it.
That beer is going to be better no matter what.
Yeah. 100%.
Were there certain beer styles in each state that maybe you saw and you go, you don't always see these here, in other parts of
Alaska for sure. I didn't drink a lot of them. But Alaska, for sure, there are several breweries that are kind of well known for their work with barley wine. That's one, and probably because it's so dang cold and winter's so long, that making imperial stouts and barley wine becomes a necessity essentially for these people.
Yeah, that's true. It keeps you warm from the inside.
Yeah. And so that's what I mean. I was like, not stereotype or anything like that, but you're in a colder state. And they're drinking lots of whatever they're drinking, lots of beer. So it has to be some sort of different culture up there.
Yeah, it really does. Well, I mean, and one of the breweries up there that is really well known for like their work with like barrel aging stuff is Anchorage Brewing, but they won my best small brewery this year, and so that's just one of those things that I had high expectations for that visit, and it still exceeded them. I think it was the only brewery that I've ever had where they won more than one award for the different styles. Because it won for their Czech Pilsner Time for a Change, and they also won Best Sour called All Seeing. That was a sour ale made with hand-picked Alaskan blueberries.
Wow.
It was just phenomenal, and they had an amazing barrel-aged beer. Like I said, that's not typically my cup of tea, but it was really, really good. And they are just well known for it. But every style across the board was awesome there.
Yeah. Can you talk about, we discussed this a little bit earlier, but the state of craft beer and craft breweries right now?
Yeah.
We've got some closings around here, which suck. Some good beer's gone away, some good breweries gone away. And there's some settling out, but we're seeing some expansion in some cases too. We've got some breweries that have multiple locations. We got breweries that are coming to town. We got breweries that are adding another location, building out a new location. So what is your opinion of the state of craft beer right now?
I think, so funny enough, we are actually going to be talking about this soon on a different show too. You pretty much hit the nail on the head in that overall here in Wisconsin, I would say the growth has still slightly outpaced the closures, but it's closer than what it has been, the last, at this point, 10 years, that the kind of the craft beer expansion. And the thing that I have noticed is that most of the closures are, just like a full brewery, brewery just, closing of shop. And that while we've had a couple fully brand new breweries, most of the openings are for secondary and auxiliary tap rooms or secondary breweries.
Yep.
So I do think that has kind of shown that the breweries that are succeeding are able to continue to kind of build off of that. And that some other breweries that maybe just for whatever reason, sometimes it's the beer, sometimes it's just the fact that whoever in charge isn't great at running a business. Sometimes it's because the landlord decides to increase the prices and they aren't able to. I mean, that kind of stuff happens too. But whatever the causes are, we definitely have seen a little bit more leveling out, and I think we are going to see more of that. I think there, are going to be more closures, obviously, in 2025, and we'll probably still see some growth. I wouldn't be surprised though if, like we just said, it's a lot more of breweries that are already finding success building off of that. There still will be new breweries opening up, but I do think that is kind of where things are at least shifting slightly at this time.
Yeah, we can give an example.
Even the bigger ones that are open that are open are shifting. I mean, they're shifting to not it's not just craft beer for them anymore.
Yeah, no, I know we've talked about before, the seltzers and the fact that breweries are offering kind of a wider variety of things. More and more breweries are getting into distilling even to make spirits. We have a couple of those here in Milwaukee and New Glarus. I know, Scott, we were talking about this off air. New Glarus just announced a $55 million expansion that's going to completely change and improve on the visitor experience. It's going to make it a top-notch destination brewery, but they're also not only increasing beer production, but they're adding a distillery, which is something they've been talking about, I think, for like a decade. And they're finally doing it. So that is going to become, I'm sure that is going to become just as, very slightly sought after early on once it is online.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you, so you've had a good breakdown of the breweries that you've gone to across the country. Like what are the states that lead for you? Wisconsin, obviously. How many breweries have you been to just in Wisconsin?
I can see, this is why people should go and buy the book, because then you could
buy the
book. I'm going
to buy the book. I've bought the book.
Yeah.
If you had read the book, Steve.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I kind of dropped the ball there. Wisconsin is at 203.
Wow. Dude, our total brewery list combined, I think we're at like 265 combined.
That's kind of the one. That's the one big one. I only have one other state that's in the triple digits, and that's California.
Yeah.
At 122. So after that, it does drop off some. North Carolina's third with 85.
Yeah.
Tennessee is actually kind of up there. It's at 38. So,
Right.
not too shabby of a number for Tennessee.
That's pretty good. Is there a unicorn beer? I know this is really a dumb question, but because I don't know if I can answer this question, but is there a unicorn beer out there that you've not had that you're kind of on a quest for, or like I'm going to get back there? You just want it?
Yeah, I would say I have a unicorn brewery, and that is Treehouse.
Yeah.
I have not been to Treehouse, and even though I'm not a huge, like I know we've talked about, I'm not a huge IPA guy, but we lived in the Northeast back in 2017 briefly while we were traveling. And at one point I drove pretty close to where Treehouse was. But this was still early. This was earlier Treehouse where they had information on their site that pretty much said that depending on the release days, they may or may not have the ability to pour beer. So it was well before, they now have multiple tap rooms all over Massachusetts and tons of beer. But at that point I was like, okay, I'm not going to drive out of my way and risk, them not being able to pour me beer. And I should have just done it anyway, but I didn't at that point. But they are one that is very much on my wish list. We've talked about possibly going to New England again, either this year or next year. So we'll see, possibly getting back there. But I would say they would probably be right now, off the top of my head, probably the number one kind of unicorn place that I'd like to get to.
I've had beer from there, but I'm like, you have not been there, but yes, that is high on the list too, because they make.
Well, they have one too. I'm sure I don't think I would get to it, but they have one out on Cape Cod that's like on the water that just looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
That'd be the thing, right? Go sit there for an afternoon and just drink some tree.
Oh my gosh.
I tell you, that's another one that's good that's up there, and I've been, but they've got multiple kind of places too. Is Trillium.
I've been.
Another really good
Trillium
one.
is my favorite from Massachusetts. They make phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, and they've got multiple tap rooms around. I think last time I was there, we visited a couple of them, just kind of going around town.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's another one that I visited before. They only had one. They only had their one out in Canton, like when I was there. So that's another one that really has been able to grow and change a lot.
Yeah,
really great beer. I love. We talked about this, and it's in your book as well. The experience, and I'm an experienced guy as far as going into a brewery. I'll tell you, one of my most favorite breweries that I went to in 2024 when I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, was Mitten.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in there. Now I'm a big baseball guy, and I didn't know because I went on their website and it wasn't listed on their website what their beers were. So I walked in there. And it's a baseball themed brewery. It's an old renovated firehouse from like the 1800s. It's really cool. But every beer that they have in there is like a baseball theme type beer. And I had a peanuts and Cracker Jack porter.
That's my favorite beer from them.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, I had that and I went,
Great minds think alike.
Absolutely perfect. I had it on a flight and I only got to stay there for like an hour. But I was like, I have got to get back to this place. I mean, so can you talk about that? You've been there before?
So first of all, before we get off the baseball topic, you obviously need to come up here to Milwaukee because we have Broken Bat Brewing, which is a full baseball brewery. They have their own indoor wiffle ball field that plays leagues. They partner with the Bobblehead Hall of Fame that's in Milwaukee, and there's baseball bobbleheads all in the tap room. It is all baseball all the time. And we also have the Leinenkugel's Barrel Yard, which is a pilot brewery inside of AmFam Field that is open year round. So even when the season is not going in, you can go in and drink beers out on the balcony overlooking the field inside the ballpark. So you want to do baseball breweries, I'm going to tell you right now, Milwaukee is the number one place to be.
Wow, that's cool.
Well, and my point being of that too is like that was one of my more unique beers of the year that I had, and I just went, this is awesome. Now I do have a question. Being that you're in Wisconsin, have you found a cheese curd beer?
No, thank God. I don't think
Would you try it?
That would. Yeah, I would. I mean, I would probably. I mean, I'd have to.
Yeah.
To get a taster of it.
You put it on a plate.
I don't feel like cheese would necessarily be a flavor that people would be looking for.
Probably not. But
I've had some crazy because that's one of the awards is most unique beers. I've had some really, really crazy ones here. Let me pull up the one that I always tell people about. It was from
this in the past year or so, or just
well, it was from 4 years ago. It was in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was in Lincoln, Nebraska, at a place called Boiler Brewing.
Okay.
And apparently, it is based off of what is a regional delicacy that people do. It was a hot sauce, barrel aged, chili and cinnamon roll pastry sour.
Okay, all right.
It was a bourbon barrel aged sour with maple syrup, hot sauce, cream cheese, vanilla, and cinnamon, and it had cinnamon sugar on the rim. And apparently, it was surprisingly, the elements were in there, and it's surprising. Apparently, people there eat cinnamon rolls with chili. Like they did. Apparently, that's a thing.
Okay.
And so they made this beer as a way of whatever. But it's surprisingly kind of it was not something I would not have drinking a pint of it. Don't get me wrong.
Let me ask you
real
quick.
But in that sample, it kind of worked.
Did the chili? What part of the chili aspect came through? Was there just a spice or something?
Yeah, kind of like a
Steve
chili
knows why I'm
kind
asking.
of thing. Yeah, kind of like the chili-ish spiciness kind of powder kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you got the cinnamon, kind of the almost like the vanilla frosting kind of feel. And then obviously, like I said, besides the spice, but the chili spice was also you could distinguish between that and with the hot sauce, and then there was the barrel. It somehow got all the elements. I don't know how they did it, but. Yeah, that was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, if you can do that, if you can hit those flavors, and you're like, well, I get that, and I get that, and I get that.
Yeah.
All right, this is a good beer. It is what it says.
It is what it is. Yeah, they're not lying to you.
Yeah. So I've been kicking around. I homebrew a little bit, and Steve is from Cincinnati, and he loves some Skyline chili. And I swear I'm going to make a Skyline chili beer, but I couldn't figure out.
Well, that's the thing. Then you'd have to put cheese on the top, right?
But
tell me, it's got to have cheese, right? You got to have cheese.
And I just tell myself, if I make it, I'm not going to put the cheese in it, but I'm I'm going to put the cheese on top of the beer when you're drinking the beer. I don't know.
I don't know how that's ever going to happen, but
you'll have to let me know how that goes.
And
one of the other
I'll make
beers,
it. It won't be good, but I'll make it.
One of the other beers, I had some pickle beers. It became kind of a joke in 2024, and some folks sent me some pickle beers to try. And it is, I always forget. I don't know how to pronounce the name of their brewery.
I think it's the Steel.
The Steel Brewing?
I think so.
Okay. So I had their sour pickle, which wasn't bad. But then I also had gotten the spicy sour pickle. And I took 2 sips of that, and I just said, I can't do this. And it's very rare that I can count on my hand maybe the number of times that I could not finish a beer because it was just – I mean, they sell it, and people may like it, but have you had beers like that where you're just like, I can't do this anymore? This is just
yeah, definitely. Sometimes it's due to quality. But other times, I mean, there's been occasions where it's just I think the time that I point out is especially with some of the barrel-aged beers, because part of it is too, in that case in particular, if I'm out traveling to breweries, it's okay, I don't really love this, and it's also 12%. So it's why would I'm not going to force myself to drink this if, whatever the case may be. But that like I said, normally I don't get those. But yeah, I would say I'm with you, though, that, normally it's not because it's oh, this is just not for me. That normally doesn't happen.
Those pickles, some of them are really good. If you get a Kolsch, you kind of get, it's lighter, right? And okay, maybe I can kind of get where you're going with it. That Distill is straight dill pickle. It came out of the jar of pickles. They took the pickles out and they put it in a can.
I've had one like that before too. It was like a dill pickle sour, and it was from a brewery in Chicago. And it was very much the same.
Yes. That's rough.
Scott had him you were talking about cinnamon earlier. Scott had him a cinnamon beer at Sonder Brewing in Mason, Ohio, near Cincinnati. He didn't like it, and I actually liked it.
You ever drink a beer and it gets progressively worse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That first drink, you're I get it, and then it just goes downhill. I don't know what the hell happened to this beer. Yeah. It is not good. So, yeah, we do have as this comes out, we'll have a top 10 list of our 2024 stuff, right, Steve? And both of those beers we just talked about are on that list.
It's on the
Yeah,
list. Yeah.
I'll have to keep my eye out for that. And if it isn't out already, you'll have to go back and
Yeah.
look at because like I said, I do my annual review where I have 20 awards that I give out every year for different qualities, whether it's part of the tap room, different beer styles that I, give out awards for. So
yeah, it is fun. Like we're just we're doing a year in review and we're doing like a top 10 thing. I mean, we did a year in review.
Oh, it's all
we
just in fun.
10.
Yeah,
it really is.
I think I talk about that in the book where I talk about my awards, and I think I have some arbitrary. I kind of try to explain my rules with it, and at one point, and then I say, but it's like these are my made up awards to give out, so it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks.
Right.
Exactly.
And like you said, you're not crapping on anybody either at the same time.
No,
it really is all in fun. We don't do that either.
No, it's all subjective. So even though your book is about flights, not every brewery offers flights.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. No.
What do you do in that situation?
Well, normally they at least do half pours. And so the hope is that you can do maybe 2, half pours. Otherwise, it's very rare. I can count on my hands probably the number of times that I've gone to a brewery and they just don't even do half. It's like only pints. And then it's like, okay, I guess I'm trying one thing. Like, and that's what it is.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like most of the time they at least do half pours, or some sort of smaller pour. Which, is just, it's not quite the same, obviously, as being able to try, you don't get to try quite as many, but I talk about that in the book. I go through the different pour options for people and like what the pros and cons are for each one. Because there are definitely pros to drinking a full pint versus drinking a 4-ounce shooter, essentially, of a beer. Like there are definitely pros to it in terms of evaluating the beer. Like, and I totally get that. But yeah, just like I said, flights are my thing. That's what I like to do at a new brewery, and that's not going to change.
Yeah,
I'm the same way, and there's been some other beers that I had in 2024 and I kind of came up with this. We've had this discussion of like, what would you get on a flight? What would you get on a pint? Maybe what would you buy in a 6-pack? And there are some beers. I mean, some of the either sweet beers that I've had that I go, this is just good for a flight. I couldn't, and there's a couple of them. I mean. And there's a couple of them I've had like on a 12-ounce, and I'm like, especially like more of the really sweet beers, and I'm going, man, this is just way too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like we talked about, like some of the big, barrel-aged big stouts, or like some of like the big fruited sours, or or like we talked about some of the really weird beers, like that are perfect for like the 4 or 5-ounce pours that you don't necessarily need to get a full pint glass full of it. But yeah. That I'm fully in agreement on that.
That cinnamon roll from Sonder should have been on a flight. I did have a full pint of that, which was probably part of the problem. Hey, that kind of leads me to my last question. We're going to let you go. Do you ever feel like when you go somewhere in breweries, and I do this too, I want flights when I go somewhere new, but do you ever get the vibe that they hate pouring flights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I mean. And I do talk about that in the thing that it's like, I've been to a couple places that have sense of like, they don't do flights on weekends because flights take more time. They take longer to pour. They create more dishes for staff. So it's more of a hassle, and especially depending on the type of brewery. Like if you're like a big brewery that's like packed on the weekends, doing flights is not necessarily something that is going to be able to happen. If there's like a long line of people, they want you to come in, order the beer you want, and they can get it out to you quick. So yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, people are good about it, but I do definitely know, and that's why I always thank them. I do definitely know that for most bartenders, at least, flights are not their favorite thing to pour.
Right. When I was in Colorado for JBF, again, we were in Colorado Springs and doing the breweries, but we would go during the day, during the week. They weren't busy, but I would still apologize. I go, I know they're a pain in the ass, but I'm only here. This may be the only time I'm getting a flight or two or whatever.
Well, and then sometimes though you'll be with people and the bartender just keeps bringing you over more. Like once they find out what I do and everything, and they'll just bring me over even more little like 2-ounce like salmon. They'll keep gearing. I'm like, okay, so you obviously don't mind. You're bringing over more stuff and
exactly. You have a little conversation like, oh yeah, we got this other thing. Maybe you want to try this one too. Like, I'm coming then. Exactly. Then you don't mind so much. So yeah, I do apologize sometimes when I do it, but I am kind of to your point. I try to pay attention if they're busy or that kind of thing. I won't, but
100%.
Yeah, again, if it's 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, I'm getting a flight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm getting one. So, still,
hey,
Steven, you want to wrap up with? Yeah.
I got one last question. Do you have a plan on some breweries that you've never been to that you hope to visit in 2025?
Well, like I said, I'm hoping, if we are able to get to New England, there would be, Treehouse is obviously kind of one of the bigger ones. But there's also quite a few. Getting back to Portland, Maine would be something that I would really like to be able to do. There's a host of Bellflower is one that's very high on my wish list in Portland, as well as Austin Street, Battery Steel. Like that, there's quite a few up there. And it's not necessarily a specific brewery, but Rhode Island is the only state where I've only been to one brewery. And that brewery is actually now closed. And so I do cover all 50 states in the book, but Rhode Island is kind of an asterisk. Because I was actually hoping to go to more than one, but the other one that we went to go look at I was planning on going to, I looked at the hours wrong. They weren't open yet. We didn't have time to wait around for 2 hours for them to open. So Rhode Island, just in general, I would say I would like to get to more breweries in, because that, like I said, that's the state that I just haven't been able to explore really at all for breweries.
Really cool. Cool.
All right. Well, Joel, we appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Anytime.
Yeah, and anytime you want to come back on here, whatever you want, you're welcome anytime.
You'll have to do a book. We'll do a book update in a few months or something.
Yeah, let's do that. And if you ever want to do like a back-to-back podcast episode, we could do that too. So just
we can. Yeah. We record a few things, and
that's what I've heard.
Yeah, we're really good at that.
Yeah.
We will combine our resources, and we'll talk more about craft beer soon. All right, Joel, thanks a lot, man. We appreciate it. For Joel Geier and Scott Touron, I'm Steve Sullivan, and this has been the Brewery Underground Podcast.
Cheers.